And for the 16th time ever, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Reviewing Network Live. This is our weekly stream of consciousness conversation recording session where we sit back and we talk about things that happened the previous week before. This is a free-form, long audio podcast, basically, where we're going to be talking about, some of the stuff that's happened in the last week. And these are longer than my usual videos. These are longer than my usual reviews. And they're also, for the most part, unedited. So there is going to be some foul language here, so if you're not really into the whole me saying F-bombs and all that type of stuff, which I don't say a lot, but I do say them on occasion, so if you're not into that, you'd probably be best to step aside right now and go do something else. But if you're up to the challenge, as we usually do here, let's begin the conversation. And it honestly isn't a busy news week. There really isn't a whole lot there we can really delve into. I mean, there was a couple things I had in mind, but I just really didn't feel like they were really worthy of being something to talk about on here. But there were a couple things I did want to talk about. So we'll get to those once we get to the thing that we usually start off with. And that is, of course, the weekend box office. Mainly the top 5 movies of the week. Not really anything too surprising or too significant. We have a new number 1 movie, which is not really all that surprising when we get to that one. But we can run through these other 5 pretty quickly. These other 4, I should say, pretty quickly. So let's go to the number 5 movie this week, which is number 4 last week, and that was Trolls Band Together. $4 million this weekend, dropping 34% from the previous week. In its 5th week, up to $88.6 million, about $88.7 million, $88,662,895. Worldwide gross is up to $183 million right now, which is to be expected right now. Like I said, there really isn't a whole lot of new big competition except for the number 1 movie, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But it's doing circles around Wish right now, which finally dropped out of the top 5. Actually dropped out of the top 5 last week, but $54.2 million for that one from Disney. Over 126 million worldwide, so this Trolls Band Together is clearly beating that out right now. And Universal's got another animated film coming out this week, Illumination's Migration, which I did not see good projections going into that, but it's an animated movie opening up on Christmas and weekend, and Universal's done a pretty good job of putting out these movies on Christmas weekend, and they have become successes. 2 years ago we had Sing 2 become a big hit. Last year, of course, we had Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. So I wouldn't be surprised if Migration, even if it starts off slow, it will find an audience over the course of the holidays. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again with Migration. So anyway, on to the number 4 film, and that is Godzilla -1, which I saw this week. And I gotta say, a lot of the people that said that this was really good, I really do believe that I really do believe them, because this was really one of the best movies of the year I've seen so far. I don't think it's gonna make my top 10, but it may just be at the top of my honorable mentions list. And I'll get to that in a couple of weeks when I do my top 10 best and worst movies of the year. Which might actually be you might actually hear them on here first when I do my free previews coming up on Christmas Eve and then New Year's Eve. I got another one there. I'll talk more about that at the end of the show, so stick around for that. But I haven't decided when I'm going to put the best and worst out first. I mean, it's coming. I don't know if I'm going to do it straightforward in a talking about the movies episode, or have it here first and then have it go from there. But all that said, Godzilla -1 will definitely be somewhere in the best movies list, either in the top 10 or the honorable mentions, because it is worth it. It's a really good movie. $4.8 million this weekend, bringing its total up to $34.2 million, $34.3 million, when you round it up to the number that they have here, $34,257,586, which, for a movie that didn't have a huge marketing campaign and just got the success because of word of mouth, that's really impressive stuff. The worldwide gross is up to $64 million worldwide, according to Box Office Mojo. I'd say if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. I don't know how much longer it's going to keep extending into theaters, but if you got it playing in your area, I'd say definitely check it out. It's definitely worth the watch. Moving on to the number 3 film, which was the number 1 movie last week, The Boy and the Heron, Hayao Miyazaki's latest film, took a steep drop off, 60.2% from last week, $5.1 million, $23.1 million after 2 weeks. Worldwide, it's over $100 million worldwide. And again, this was another movie that did not have a big marketing push, but people just came to see it on word of mouth. And, you know, even though it fell off from last week from the number 1 movie, that's pretty good, all things considered. It's one I haven't seen yet, but I will get around to it at some point. Probably won't see it in time to make my best of the year list, but it'll probably be something I'll cover on the main website as a written review. So Moving on to number two last week, and that is The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. $5.8 million, 37.6% drop off. Total gross so far is $145.2 million. Worldwide, it's up to $289 million worldwide. I mean, it's hanging in there. It's been holding on that number 2 spot for a while now. I think it was number 2. It's been number 2, I think, since after Thanksgiving, I think. I mean, it's been hanging in there for these last 3 weeks. And obviously, it probably won't do that this week because of the new releases coming up. But with that said, let us go ahead and get to the main event, the number 1 movie of the weekend. Not surprisingly, it's Wonka. Timothy Chalamet starring as Willy Wonka. It's Paul King who directed it, who did the Paddington movies. There was a lot of word of mouth going on this one pretty early on, and the numbers speak for themselves. $39 million opening weekend. The worldwide gross over $150 million is in the first couple of days alone. So this thing is already a success, I believe. Because I don't think it was a big budgeted film, if I'm not mistaken. It probably had a big budget, but not like a $200 million budget. But I could check right here. $125 million. It's big, but not super, super big. I mean, it's not like Wish or some of these other movies that had over these massive $200+ million budgets. But I found this pretty interesting too. Apparently, when Warner Brothers released this movie out and put the marketing campaign out there, they tried their hardest to make sure that this movie was not sold as a musical. I read this off of Deadline Hollywood from Anthony D'Alessandro, who does the weekend box office reports, and it's interesting. I have it right here where it says, a great start for a live-action feature musical at the box office. That genre nearly put to bed post-COVID by such bombs as West Side Story, Dear Evan Hansen, and In the Heights, which probably is one of the worst sandwiches ever, because you have 2 really good movies in West Side Story and In the Heights, and you got that piece of shit Dear Evan Hansen in the middle there. Talking about a rebound entirely for the genre. Warner's risked not one but two musicals this holiday season. Of course, we have The Color Purple coming out on Christmas Day, which I saw the trailer for it when Wonka came out. I'm still looking forward to it. Apparently, when I went to go see Wonka on Saturday, they were having like a special group screening for this movie from like a church that was in the area. I don't know if it was for this new movie or they played the older movie again. But I just saw that and I thought it was kind of interesting. I didn't know I'm pretty sure it is the newer movie, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong on that. But there was a thing on here where they talked about how that they didn't. I'm trying to find where it says that they were trying to sell this when they were trying to sell this movie. It was trying to avoid not being sold. Here it is. I got it right here. It says that, again, a great result for a musical after the genre's post-COVID funk, and the studio intentionally didn't sell Wonka as such in trailers. Why? Apparently, test audience focus groups generally hate musicals, and the only way to get people into the theater with one is to trick them. If they get into the door and wind up enjoying themselves, then business is solid for a studio on a musical. That's the same reason why Lionsgate didn't lean into the beautiful country ballad numbers in the Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes marketing to set the prequel apart from the rest of its previous sequels. Was there really a lot of country ballad music numbers in the other Hunger Games movies? Because I really don't think there was. But you see what they say. But the thing that caught my eye was the thing that said that test audience focus groups generally hate musicals, and the only way to get people into the theater with one is to trick them, which probably explains why the new Mean Girls musical isn't being sold as a musical. But I don't know. My whole thing with that is that the trailers don't really do a good job of selling the movie altogether, because it just looks like a remake of the original Mean Girls, which the original Mean Girls is a great movie. Like, if you're going to sell this as the movie version of the musical, do that. I mean, The Color Purple is selling itself as a musical too. Like, I don't get why. I don't know why they think that's a good idea to do that, but what do I know? It's working for people, and the movie's got a great cinema score. It's probably going to do well over the holiday season. I just wish I enjoyed the movie like everybody else did. When I did my review for it, I basically said that I was extremely let down by it. I mean, Paul King is a great director with the Paddington movies. I had high hopes going into this because of that. And I thought Timothée Chalamet was okay as Wonka. I thought the movie itself was pretty lackluster in terms of like from the story aspect, from the fact that it's pretty much doing the same thing we've seen done over and over again with these prequels. There's nothing new about this movie that is anything unique or exciting. The few times that there are elements in this movie that are cool are very few and far between. There's also a lack of really interesting characters overall. Probably the two best characters in the whole movie were Hugh Grant as the Oompa Loompa and also Keegan-Michael Key as the Chief of Police. They had really the best moments in the movie, in my opinion, the funnier moments in the movie. But other than that, though, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I really wanted to like it more. I really went into it with higher expectations because of the people involved in it, but evident is in the end I was kind of let down by it. It was really part of a day when I was really let down overall, especially with the other thing that happens that we're going to get into in just a little bit. But yeah, like I unfortunately didn't like Wonka, unfortunately, as much as everybody else did, but I don't hate it per se. It's definitely the lesser of the Willy Wonka movies, but I really did want more coming into it. But like I said, it's going to stick around during the holiday season. There's not going to be a ton of big family competition after next week, so yeah, it's a good time to release this movie. And in terms of what's coming out on Friday in general, American Fiction, which is being touted for several numerous Oscars, that comes out in wider release. We have Anyone But You, which looks like a really lackluster comedy, that you should not be releasing around Christmas time because the movie's probably not going to do well. We have Zac Efron in The Iron Claw, which is coming out, and Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is going to be the big new release. One's going to wonder if that's going to make any money with everything going on over at Warner Brothers and DC. And then we got Migration coming out on December 22nd as well. I want to throw these other ones in here for Christmas Day. I don't know if Box Office Mojo is going to add these into the list that we'll do next week, but we got a couple movies here that will come out on Monday. The Color Purple being the biggest one, and then we have Michael Mann's Ferrari with Adam Driver and George Clooney's The Boys in the Boat. So if they're in there, they'll be in there. But if they're not, I just wanted to mention them because they'll probably be in the one that we'll do after this next one coming up. So, but other than that, though, nothing too crazy else in the weekend box office. No other big new releases to really talk about per se. So. Let's get into some story time, and we don't have a ton of interesting stories in terms of movie news, TV news, and all that, but, basically, this first story I'm going to cover here is just me ranting about something that happened yesterday that let's just get into it. And that is, of course, the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers are still apparently a football team still playing football. They are still not been eliminated from the playoffs despite the fact that everything that has gone wrong could go wrong has gone wrong. And I'm just at the point where I'm just kind of like, it's hard for me to root for this team right now. It's hard for, like, just, I can already feel myself getting frustrated with what I have to say here. Give me 1 second. Sort of prepare myself for this. Okay. It's time we had that talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Back when I made my NFL predictions list, I had them in contention for the number 1 seed at 12-5. I said this with the assumption that Matt Canada was what we were seeing from Matt Canada in the preseason and what we saw in the second half of the season was going to be a difference maker. The roster was much improved. They got talent on there now. They look great in the preseason, but I only said that they were going to do that if they lived up to that potential. As of the day I'm recording this, December 17th, 2023, they are currently sitting at 7-7. They were 7-4 going into the month of December with pretty much a guarantee to make the playoffs, if not win the division and maybe even compete for the number 1 seed. And then Arizona comes to town. And they completely dropped the ball. Arizona was a 2-win team at this point. And then New England comes to town on a Thursday night. New England was a 2-win team. They came in and completely embarrassed them. And then everybody in Pittsburgh was talking about how this week against the Colts, it's a playoff game. It's a playoff game. We have to pretend like this is a playoff game because everything is on the line here. We're going to be ready. We're going to be ready. And at the start of the game, they looked like it. They were up 13-0 in the second quarter. And then the shit literally hit the fan. Indianapolis scored 30 points and won the game. How many points did Pittsburgh score? 0. Absolutely nothing. This Indianapolis Colts team that did not have its top quarterback in Anthony Richardson, he was out for the season, and has been coasting along on Jonathan Taylor, who was out of this game, by the way. Zach Moss got injured. Gardner Minshew was the quarterback. They blew the Steelers out for their first win against them in 15 years, because it was 2008 when Peyton Manning beat them at home in Pittsburgh. So, yeah. I hate this team. I hate this friggin' team right now. I don't want to say what I think everyone wants me to say, that Matt Canada, getting rid of him was the thing that caused this to happen, because then why did they regress when Matt Canada was there? Why did Kenny Pickett regress as much as he did when Matt Canada was there? Like, I'm not ready to blame I'm not blaming Kenny Pickett for this, but I'm not ready to apologize to Matt Canada, because I'm not going to do that right now. What I am going to say is that the Mike Tomlin era has to end. It just has to end, because, like, for a guy that lives off the fact that he's had a non-losing season every year since he came to the Steelers, the fact that he wouldn't want to try to, keep winning to have that record going, maybe even, hey, how about we win so we don't have to keep asking teams to get us help in the playoffs? Yeah, because you know what happens when you do that? Those teams don't give a crap. You think Cleveland wants to help you out? No. They're doing fine right now without Deshaun Watson, because they brought Joe Flacco back. Yeah, the Bengals are doing terrible right now, even though the Bengals are doing great right now, even though Joe Burrow's not there, because you know what? Jake Browning's giving them a chance. The Ravens are collapsing like you think they're going to. Nobody is going to help you, and you know what? Quite frankly, I'm glad they're not going to help you, because you know what? You deserve this. You deserve every single thing that you get, and I hope you rot in fourth place for the rest of the year. And I hope that somebody in that organization finally wakes up and realizes that we cannot keep pretending that this team is not stuck in 2005, where they're just hoping that everything's going to fall into place and we'll make the playoffs and then we'll go on our magical playoff run. It's not like that anymore. You don't have guys like Tom Brady, as Peyton Manning, as your main threats anymore. Everybody has quarterbacks that are better than you right now. Even the quarterbacks that weren't high draft picks, like I just mentioned. Joe Flacco, he's been out of football for months now. Comes back in a month later, and all of a sudden the Cleveland Browns become one of the hottest teams in the league. Jake Browning comes in, does incredibly well for the Bengals. It's like, why do you even need Joe Burrow at this point? Like, Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew comes in for Anthony Richardson. Look what happens to him. Like, he's going to get the Colts in the playoffs as well. Like, who else? Who else is another one that's doing pretty well right now? But you get the idea here. Like every other team that's in the playoff push right now has a better quarterback position, had a better situation going on than the Steelers do right now. Because you know what the Steelers are trying to do right now? They're trying to do the exact same damn thing they've been doing every single year. They don't want to get into the playoffs on their own. They want help to get into the playoffs, because they are so arrogant and so is that they are too stupid to realize that they have problems within their organization. And it's going to get to that point when the whole thing is going to boil over. And also, the shit's going to hit the fan. The fire is going to literally come out, and everything. And there's going to be that one little expose that comes out that completely damages the reputation of this franchise. And you know what? At this point, I'm waiting for that to happen. I'm going to be just like I said with Taylor Swift, when that day comes when they finally expose her ass. I'm going to be just like Bender on that episode of Futurama where the tap dancing girl is literally dying, and he's just like, "In your face, little girl! I'm not even going to wait to dance on your grave. I'm going to dance on your corpse right now." And I'm going to be doing like the tap dancing on them. It's just like that's where I'm at right now with the Steelers right now, because they are just that horrible of a football team. And you know what? They don't care. They don't care how bad they are right now. This isn't even funny to watch anymore. This is just pathetic, because they didn't even try to win yesterday. The coach just rammed it down their throats. And even then, they still had a chance to win. And they did nothing. They did nothing. They were pretty good running the football for a number of weeks. But not when Mitch Trubisky's in there, because you know what? Mitch Trubisky's making $10 million a year. He has to be the hero. Even though every time he's the hero, he throws a freaking interception. And he did that twice yesterday. He's done it every single game that he's been in this year. And it's just like, I just can't take it anymore. Every single December, I should be happy right now because Christmas is coming, all the good tidings and all. But you know what? Every single Sunday that after the Steelers play, I get so depressed and so emotionally drained by the fact that this team still continues to do the same thing they've been doing every single year, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. That I get so drained. It's not even a depression. It's just draining. It's just like, I can't take it anymore. Like, I just want one time, 1 year where the Steelers win. They don't need any help to make the playoffs. They do what they need to do. They accomplish their business, and they don't have to ask anybody else to get in. But no, the Steelers can't do that. Steelers can't do that. I'm telling you, until they are officially eliminated, the Steelers are going to be just like Cartman when that episode of South Park when he gets hit on the head and he thinks he's like a Vietnamese prostitute. I think a Vietnamese prostitute. He's going to go out in the middle of the streets just like not even him, but Dave Chappelle's crackhead character from South Park. He's going to be out there like in Chappelle's show. Excuse me. He's going to be like Dave Chappelle's crack character from Chappelle's show. It's just like, hey man, I'll suck your dick for the playoffs, man. You got to get. He's like, what do you need? Like. It's getting to that point. And even Mike Tomlin, I think, knows his time is almost up. Like, I feel like yesterday, even after the game, like, he just looked like he was done, man. Like, he just, like, one would hope that this means that in a couple of weeks from now, his name will be one of the names that gets axed on Black Monday, which is, of course, the Monday after the NFL season is over, and then all the head coaches getting chopped off. We already had a couple of them. One of them we'll get to in just a little bit here, but I just can't take it anymore, man. Like, what am I really looking forward to these last 3 weeks? Even when I know they're going to lose. I know they're going to lose out. But even then, this team continues to find new and embarrassing ways to lose. Players aren't even trying to block anybody. Players don't even give a crap. They're just sitting there. George Pickens, I'm looking at you. Deontay Johnson, I'm looking at you. Najee Harris, I'm looking at you. Like, it's just, I'm just out of it, man. I just can't take it anymore. And I know I have a problem. I know I have a problem with this because I put too much more investment into it. I get attached. Like, that's my biggest problem with Pittsburgh sports teams. There comes that point where I just get attached, and when you break me down like that, it's like a family member breaks my heart for doing something incredibly ridiculous and just evil. Like, that's how bad it is. Like, I know I need help. I know I need to get out and go live a lot, go out there and see life and all that. But it just really, like, I know I'm just rambling on right now, but like, I'm just out of it, man. Because really, what more do I have to look forward to? Watching this team get embarrassed by a Bengals team looking for revenge after what we did to them last month. Watching them go to Seattle, get completely embarrassed. Watching them lose to the backup quarterback for the Ravens, since the Ravens are pretty much going to be landing the number 1 seed at this point. I'm just out of it, man. Like, this is the type of thing that the way the Steelers play right now, and the way the NFL is just so stuck on being so story driven, and the fact that the Steelers will never adapt to the modern NFL, even though they should. Maybe I just need to get away from the NFL in general. Maybe that's just something that I just need to do. And I don't know. Like, I know I'm just rambling on right here, but at the same time, it's just like, I can't take it anymore. Like, I just need to. And I wanted to get this one out of the way because I want to get to the fun stuff. Keep moving on here from the fun stuff here, because we are going to get into some fun stuff here. And so, you know what? Let's move on to some fun stuff that actually did happen in the NFL this week. And that involves a certain coach who got fired this week, and rightfully so. So let's talk about some fun things that happened with the NFL. Most importantly, the dismantling of the Los Angeles Chargers, and in return, the definitive end of the Brandon Staley era. because, of course, I'm talking about what happened on Thursday night when the Raiders not only beat the Chargers, that'd be one thing, but when you get dropped 63-7 in the third quarter, and the final score was basically 63-21, like, if that wasn't the thing that was going to force the Chargers to get rid of Brandon Staley, then I don't know what was going to. But 12 hours after that happened, on Friday, Brandon Staley was fired as the head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers. I've got the story here from ESPN, so let's just kind of run through it here and talk about this a little bit, and we'll talk more about it afterwards. So, as it says, after 2.5 seasons highlighted by lofty expectations and routine letdowns, sounds familiar, around here in Pittsburgh, but I digress. The Los Angeles Chargers have fired coach Brandon Staley and general manager Tom Telesco, the team announced Friday. Giff Smith, the team's outside linebackers coach, has been named interim head coach. Jojo Wooden, the Chargers director of player personnel, will step into the general manager role on an interim basis. The Chargers were 24-24 under Staley, with one playoff berth in 2024 that ended with a 27-point blown lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which that should have been the thing that should have gotten him fired in the first goddamn place, but I digress. He is the second Chargers head coach to be fired mid-season since 1970, joining Kevin Gilbride, who was fired in 1998. That year, of course, was the year they drafted Ryan Leaf, and you can see how that career went. Owner Dean Spanos said in a statement that Charger fans deserve more. He said, "These decisions are never easy, nor are they something I take lightly, especially when you consider the number of people they impact. We are clearly not what we're expected to be, however, and we need new vision. Doing nothing in the name of continuity was not a risk I was willing to take. Our fans have stood strong through so many ups and downs in close games. They deserve more. Frankly, they've earned more." So, and they kind of run down what happened here. So if you didn't see the game, I'll basically run it down here for you from the ESPN website. Staley's defensive frustrations came to a head on Thursday after a 63-21 drubbing by the Las Vegas Raiders, who were starting backup Aiden O'Connell and were without running back Josh Jacobs. Quarterback Easton Stick made his first start for Los Angeles in place of Justin Herbert, who suffered a fracture to his right index finger in Sunday's loss to the Denver Broncos and is done for the season. This is the second time the Chargers have fired someone since drafting Herbert in 2020. Herbert's first coach, Anthony Lynn, was 33-31 from 2017 to 2020, including 7-9 in his final season. The team also fired Jay Rodgers, the defensive run game coordinator and defensive line coach. So really, it shouldn't be a surprise that this finally happened. Like, at some point, the Chargers had to look at this and basically just go, how much longer are we going to keep doing this? Like, are we really going to keep doing this until we really reach that point of no return? And I think Thursday was that point of no return. When you get trounced by 63 points to a team that was not playing for, it wasn't playing, it wasn't playing their best. They didn't have their best team on there, and they weren't even playing for a real playoff push, honestly, because they were 5-8 going. The Raiders, both teams were 5-8 going into that game, and basically the loser faced the chance of getting eliminated, pretty much, over the course of the weekend, pending on what happens with the rest of these games. But, really, the whole thing basically just says that, like, the Chargers really had some steady balls to keep this guy intact here. Like, of course, let's go to the three main reasons why this guy, basically the 3-strike rule, for why this guy finally got fired. Strike one, basically that he, in 2021, when his team had a chance to make the playoffs, it was the last game of the season against the Raiders, and whoever won that game was going in. But there was a scenario that if there was a tie, both teams would make the playoffs and essentially would knock the Pittsburgh Steelers out of there in the return. And that's exactly what they were going to do in the final seconds. Like, they were of overtime. They were literally going to just let the game end with a tie. And then Brandon Staley decides, you know what? I'm going to call time out here. And because of that, the coach of the Raiders at the time, Rich Bisaccia, who had taken the place of John Gruden, who got fired that year, basically said, all right, you want to play that game? I'm going to go play for the win. So they brought in Daniel Carlson to kick the field goal, and the rest is history. The Raiders make the playoffs, Steelers make the playoffs, Chargers go home. That was strike one. Strike two was the aforementioned playoff game from last year. They made the playoffs. They were up 27-0, beating the crap out of the Jacksonville Jaguars in the first half. And then kind of out of nowhere, the Jaguars all of a sudden came back and not only trounced the Chargers, but they won the game. They won the game single-handedly just by scoring the 30 points in the second half alone. Like, Jacksonville is a much better team now than it was when Urban Meyer was there. They made the smart move by getting Doug Peterson in there and showing what Trevor Lawrence can really do. And right now, the Jaguars are in position to maybe even stick around for possibly the 1 seed at this point, pending what happens tonight and, of course, what happens going forward. But again, that was the thing that was the one that was what I think should have told the Chargers, you gotta go, man. Like, you just aren't doing it for us. But they kept him there, and every time they brought it up, that's the other thing about Brandon Staley, is that you could tell that this guy was ready to snap at anybody who even suggested to him about what happened in Jacksonville. Like, there was an interview one time when somebody asked him about what happened. Says, simple question: do you think the Jacksonville game had an impact on what you were has an impact on what you were doing? And basically, when he got asked about it, he went nuclear. Like, he snapped at the people that were asking him the questions. Like, if you want to know exactly what it felt like, if you even asked him about the Jacksonville game, allow me to show this to you. This is what happens. Yeah, he'd basically go nuclear on you, and pretty much anytime you even question what he was doing, he's going to go back on you. Like, I remember after the loss to the Green Bay Packers, someone asked him, are you still calling the plays? He basically snapped at a reporter after the Packers lost and basically said this. It basically said, I have full confidence in our way of playing, full confidence in myself as the play caller, in the way that we teach, in the way that we scheme, full confidence in that. We've got to bring this group together and do it consistently. You can stop asking this question. I'm going to be calling the defense so we're clear, so you don't have to ask that again. And I'll let you listen to it just to hear the demeanor that he has while he's asked this question.
I have full confidence, like I've told you, and like I told you from the beginning, I have full confidence in our way of playing. Full confidence in myself as the play caller, and the way that we teach, and the way that we scheme. Full confidence in that. We got to bring this group together and do it consistently, okay? And that's where it's at. So you can stop asking that question. Okay, I'm going to be calling the defenses. Okay, so we're clear. So you don't have to ask that again.
So do you think the Jacksonville game? I added that last part in there, but you really could hear how peeved he was that somebody dared to question his coaching. Keep in mind that Brandon Staley was a defensive coach before he became the head coach of the Chargers. And, he was a defensive coordinator for the Rams, and that's how he got the job as the head coach of the Chargers. So, like, you could tell he was peeved at people that questioned his authority. But then when he lost to the Raiders, all that negativity he had, all that thing is just like, do not question my power of how I do things. Like, after the Raiders game, like, this is literally how he sounded as soon as he was asked the question about whether or not about his status as a head coach. Listen in.
Pulled out a win in New England, but with 2 field goals. Do you personally feel there's a disconnect between yourself and the locker room, the players?
I don't. I don't know that. Yes. I know that what I've done here for 3 years, and I know what I put into this, and
you called a timeout when you were on the cusp of making the playoffs. You blew a 27-point lead to Jacksonville, and you let a Raiders team led by Antonio Pierce and Aiden O'Connell without Josh Jacobs run all over you for 63 points. Yeah, we know what your legacy is, Brandon, but in all honesty, you listen to that, you could just tell that he was so deflated. Like, he got the news as soon as that game was over, or even at halftime. It's just like, Dean Spanos probably came down and said, yeah, you're not coming back after this game, so you're fired after this point. And really, can you really blame him for doing that? Because this was a long time coming, and I know it was a bad game on Thursday, but man, for a guy like that who got so many chances to come in and basically just turn this team around and try to make amends for past mistakes, he didn't do any of those things because he thought he was much better than anybody else in that room when he didn't accomplish jack squat. Like, and I feel bad for those players on the Chargers. I feel bad for Justin Herbert because you know what? Justin Herbert's a great quarterback, but unfortunately he's stuck in that same situation that guys like Dan Marino and Phillip Rivers were in. They're never going to win Super Bowls with a team that really struggles with a really good coach behind them. Like the Chargers in particular. I mean, God, how many great players have been on the Chargers that have never won championships? A lot of them. It's just like I don't know. I don't feel bad for Brandon Staley at all. He'll get back on his feet, but man, nobody's going to let him be a coach anytime soon after what happened with this tenure that he had with the Chargers. But Justin Herbert, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like that you deserve a much better team. Like, if somebody out there wants to make a trade for you, I know a team in the black and gold that could use you right now, but God help you with that massive contract extension you just had. But which begs the question, who do you get to replace a guy like Brandon Staley? Like, who could be a guy that really could turn this team around in particular? There's two names that have been out there, obvious names. Jim Harbaugh is a name that gets tossed around, even though I think he just signed an extension with Michigan, and Bill Belichick, who's pretty much on the cusp of losing his job at New England. I think they even told him in Week 10 after they lost to the Colts, yeah, you're not coming back after this season. So, I don't know. Could they turn it around? Possibly, but it's the Chargers. I mean, it's one of those teams like the Cleveland Browns. They're just cursed to really not do anything when it matters the most. So, but then again, that might change this weekend this year if the Browns actually do something. But I digress. So that for me personally, it's good to see that Brandon Staley is finally gone. But the Chargers, I feel bad for you guys. You just need to get somebody to really change your whole culture around there, man. Just. Yeah, not much more to say about that one. I'm glad Brandon Staley got fired. It's weird saying that because nobody likes to hear the news. I'm glad you got fired, but that's just one of those people that was just like, yeah, I'm glad you're gone, man. So, with that said, let's get back on a much more positive note here. We're slowly but surely going back on the positive here. Let's talk about Christmas. When you hear that bell, those bells, it's just like, yeah, Christmas time is here. That is, of course, another classic Christmas commercial that is on TV every single year, ever since 1989. That is, of course, the Hershey Kisses Christmas Bells commercial, which was, like I said, first released in December of 1989. And I've got a history behind this right here. As I said, it debuted in December of 1989. The advertisement, originally produced with stop-motion animation and later being redone with CG animation, features Hershey's Kisses fashioned as a handbell choir playing the Christmas carol, "We Wish You a Merry Christmas." The story behind this was that in 1989, the Hershey Company began an advertising campaign, which was referred to as the Whimsy Campaign. Ogilvy and Mather were the advertising agency behind the spot. David Appicelli served as the creative director. Television advertisements utilized tabletop stop-motion animation and CG product photography. Colossal Pictures, who was also the studio behind was the animation studio who produced the commercial. They're a company that has done some stuff that you might be familiar with. They did some animation for stuff like the Grateful Dead movie. They did specific things for like the Black Stallion, the criminally underrated Francis Ford Coppola movie One from the Heart, The Right Stuff, various other movies like Peggy Sue Got Married, a lot of Francis Ford Coppola stuff. They've also done stuff for like Saturday Night Live. They did the animation for Back to the Future, the Moxie Show. Trying to see what else they've done here. They've done a lot of stuff for like various companies, and they were the company that did the animation for this. Carl Weiler directed the spots and performed the stop-motion animation with Gordon Clark. John Dunn, who was the Hershey brand manager, oversaw the production and helped develop the last-minute idea to create the Christmas Bell advertisement. Leah Longman, former marketing director for Hershey, told the New York Times in 1994 that he continued to run the advertisement because they don't wear out like normal commercials, as they are only shown seasonally. And really, that makes a whole lot of sense. When you look at these commercials again, it's a simple concept. You've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Hershey's Kisses. They're just basically staring at you, just doing and giving you the "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" thing. And there is a lot of wholesomeness to it. It's a really very well done commercial. It delivers everything it promises. It's a very simplistic commercial. It doesn't really have to do anything too significant or too drastic, except for one thing that we'll get to in just a little bit. But yeah, whenever that comes on, it's just hard not to get invested by it. Like, it's just a simple premise, and yet it makes for a solid, entertaining commercial that can still be entertained many years after it first comes on the air. And it's kind of interesting when you look back at the original Hershey's commercials from 1989, and you can definitely tell the difference between the CG and the stop motion animation. So, let me just show you what I mean. If you're following along here, I'll put a link to the video that I got this from. So let's take a look. I mean, when you really look at it, you realize that stop motion animation. I can't imagine how hard it was to make something like that, like make that commercial in 1989. I guess they could. I guess with the computers that they had, they could make it work to a point where it doesn't feel like they're working long and hard like a usual stop motion thing. Because stop motion animation, of course, takes a long time to do. So maybe with the technology that they had in 1989, they could have made this work. And I'm trying to see if there's anything. That was the stop motion one. You can definitely tell the noticeable differences that I noticed watching these commercials again. Like in the stop motion one, everything kind of runs like it is. There's nothing too significant that sticks out in terms of like anything that you should notice right away, except the way the movement is, and the music changes a little bit here. But let's go to the one that's been the high definition version. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. I think because there was something here I wanted to bring up. There it is. Because if you notice in the CG commercial, it doesn't show it in the first one that they have in this compilation I found, but it's more noticeable in the second one here. The one that does the final note in the song, when we wish you we wish you a Merry Christmas. You notice that as soon as it's done, it's much redder than the other red Hershey Kisses that are there. Like, it literally looks like it looks like what happens if somebody was literally doing this themselves, and they start blushing so much that they're having trouble getting words together, and at the end, of course, he does that thing which is like, whew, with the Kisses tag there. I never noticed that until this year, which I thought was pretty interesting how that worked out. But, yeah, I just noticed that this year for the first time. But then, of course, you have the one time they did this commercial that really peeved a lot of people off, and I could tell you why I think it peeved a lot of people off here, but I'm going to see if I can show it to you right here. I got it right here. Yeah, like, a lot of people really did not like that one. In fact, when that one came out, there was actually a pretty big backlash for that, because someone described it well here. The ad is it's like the Rickroll of Christmas, because at first you expect to see the classic commercial that you come to know and love, and instead, halfway through it just decides, you know what, we're going to take this other commercial that we've been playing on TV for only a couple of months or so, and we're going to mesh it together, and people are going to love that, and not so much. And I think the biggest problem with that is that you're messing with something that's a classic commercial, and when that just happens, it just feels like the commercial, that second half of the commercial was actually its own commercial for a number of years. So I don't know what the hell they were thinking when they decided to put that commercial on there. Like, whenever that hand comes in, I just kept expecting that Hershey Kiss to go like, "Hey, what are you doing? This is our commercial. Get the hell out of here." It's just like. And again, that commercial works on its own. There's no reason why you should be doing that you should be combining both of those commercials together. And like I said, it did receive a backlash, mainly for being changed. I mean, and the company did actually respond to the backlash, basically saying that both versions have aired. So if you've been watching on TV this holiday season, both versions, including the original one, the one we all know, and the one that has the different version, actually does really actually does show the other one, but the other one is not shown as much as the original. And they actually have done another version that has been airing specifically in Canada. It's actually a third version of this. So listen. So take a look at this. Probably not the best quality overall here. Let me see if I can find a better version of it. Okay, I found a better version of it here, so take a listen to this. So yeah, it says at the end, "We are at our best when we're together," and I think that was basically their apology for the last commercial for the commercial they did beforehand. So, I mean, I'm not saying that the other commercial they did was bad in general. It's just kind of like you're messing with a classic that's been perfectly fine as it is for over 30 years, and now this year you're just going to say we're going to mesh it together because we feel like we have to be at that point in time. But it's just like that other commercial works fine on its own. Trying to mesh it together is just too much, in my opinion. I think a lot of people agree that it was basically just too much for them to ask. I mean, just like there was really no reason to change that commercial, and I'm glad that they did. Is that both versions basically have stayed on as they had. So yeah, nothing too much more to add to that one. Just another classic commercial to talk about on here. So with that said, let's continue on. So since we now are officially about a week away from Christmas, of course, I'm getting more into the spirit of the season, listening to Christmas music, watching classic Christmas movies. I think my TV has had mostly Freeform and AMC for the last month and a half now, because clearly those are the two that have the best. They have the best assortment of holiday specials on there, which I really find interesting. That AMC basically took a lot of what Freeform used to have for a long period of time. Even TBS and TNT had it in November, but of course when December came around, all that went over to Freeform, AMC. But of course the broadcast networks nowadays don't unfortunately have the same amount of stuff they have on TV this year, which really is sad to say, especially in a year when we had a writers and actors strike and no real programming to fill the void. You could have brought some of these classics back. Like, I still don't understand why nobody would pick up the rights to pick up the Charlie Brown specials. But a while ago, I put together a list of Christmas songs, the best versions of different Christmas songs in general, and I kind of just want to run through them in particular. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to play the music because, of course, copyrights and all that. So I took most of the classic Christmas songs in general, like the classic Christmas songs that we listen to every year, and I picked the ones that I put a little playlist together of some of my personal favorite renditions of classic Christmas songs, and I did them mostly with the classic songs that we all know. So the first one I have here, Jingle Bells. You got to go to Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's, I love those J-I-N jingly bells, bum, like that. I think to me, that's just my personal favorite version. I like the different spin that he puts on that. Winter Wonderland, I gotta go with the Eurythmics. Annie Lennox, just a great version of that song. She also did Put a Little Love in Your Heart with Al Green, which is from the movie Scrooged. Silver Bells, the John Legend version is my personal favorite. I like that one. I like the different tone that it takes, and it's John Legend. John Legend usually is very good with creating a unique musical spin on these classic songs in general. The Little Drummer Boy, you can't go wrong with Bing Crosby and David Bowie, what they were able to do. I would say a close second is probably one you've never heard of if you never saw if you don't remember when Gulliver's Travels came out, that terrible Gulliver's Travels movie with Jack Black and Jason Segel. But there was one good thing that came out of it. They did a pretty badass rendition of The Little Drummer Boy for College Humor, which I really recommend you check out. You can still find it online. It's definitely worth a listen. Of course, the holiday earworm, All I Want for Christmas Is You. I go with the Mariah Carey one is the one that sticks out the most. And really, nobody else can really top what they do there. Santa Claus is Coming to Town. I go with the Jackson 5 version. That's my personal favorite one. Another one that's not really a surprise, Bobby Helms with Jingle Bell Rock. Johnny Mathis, the song We Need a Little Christmas. Can't go wrong with Johnny Mathis in general. Santa Baby. For the longest, my personal favorite one is the Eartha Kitt one, and the one that I've really have grown to kind of appreciate more and more over the last couple of years was the one that Madonna did, and I didn't like it at first, mostly because I don't know, why do I keep saying Mariah Carey? Madonna, the way she sung it, it kind of reminded me of like she was trying to do like kind of a Betty Boopish type of thing, but it kind of comes off as kind of sounding like too much like a little bit what do I want to say here? Kind of got like a little baby voice type of thing to it. But the more I listen to it, and the more I've come to really appreciate it more and more. Plus, it certainly beats the crap of whatever Taylor Swift was trying to do. When it comes to Christmas classics, Taylor Swift, just like everything else in life, finds a way to ruin it by turning everything into a melodrama, a whiny country ballad. And yeah. But if I had to choose the best Santa Baby, obviously you got to go with Eartha Kitt. Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, again, Frank Sinatra. And I also have a tie here for a very underrated one by the Celtic Women. I heard this one many years ago, and every time it comes to Christmas time, it's just one that I have to listen to over and over again. It's just it's just a soft-spoken, and it's just so beautifully done. It's a really great rendition of that song. If you haven't heard it, definitely listen to that one. What Christmas Means to Me, gotta go with Stevie Wonder. Wham, of course, with Last Christmas. That's the best version of that song. Of course, Nat King Cole with Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire. Elvis Presley with Blue Christmas. John Lennon and Yoko Ono with Happy Christmas, The War Is Over. My favorite version of God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, Bare Naked Ladies and Sarah McLachlan. I mean, I'm a big Bare Naked Ladies fan, and I love that version of that song. Just because of the way that both these two different musical styles, Bare Naked Ladies and Sarah McLachlan, coming together the way that they do, I think they did a really good job with that one. That's the one I always listen to every year. Carol of the Bells. This is always the one that I always go back and forth on because there's two great versions of the song, and I'm always going back and forth on which one I like the most. Which one do I like the best? One time it'll always be David Foster, but then the other time it'll be the Trans-Siberian Orchestra version. And both of these versions are great in so many unique ways. Like the David Foster one just has great compositions, great music in general, and that point and every time they go bum 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 bum, and it goes like bum 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 bum, like it's a great version. That's the one. It's always the one that every time it plays at my work, I'm always looking for something to like bang my fingers on. And when it gets to that point, like it's just one of those things. Like once that happens, it's like you just get so invested into the music in general. And I think that it's one that I always go back to. But then the Trans-Siberian Orchestra one also has that kind of same thing too. Like in their Carol of the Bells, the moment that always does it for me is when they go like and you hear the rock and roll guitar music going on in the background, like boom then like I always go back and forth which version I love the best. Like it always goes either between, one time it'll be the Trans-Siberian Orchestra version, other times it will be the David Foster version. They're both great versions. I really have a hard time deciding which one I like the best, but I love both of those versions. Of course, with Wonderful Christmas Time, you got to go with Paul McCartney. The Ronettes with Sleigh Ride. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Which one do I like the best? It's funny because I have my list here that I did a couple of years ago, and I completely forgot to put one for It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas. But again, kind of like with We Little Christmas, I got to go with Johnny Mathis. I mean, Johnny Mathis has that voice that just really works for that song's advantage. I mean, that's a really great version of that song. Josh Groban, I go with his version of Oh Holy Night, and he also does the great song from the Polar Express, Believe. A song that I'm not the biggest fan of, mostly because of just kind of this Baby It's Cold Outside. Like it's one of those songs that, like, I just can't get over some of the things that go on in that song in particular. But if I had to pick the best version of that song, I go with the Zooey Deschanel and Leon Redbone one from Elf. Gene Autry's version of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is my favorite one. My favorite version of Frosty the Snowman is the Beach Boys version. And I always love how Frosty the Snowman, the song always ends whenever they get to the traffic cop. And it's just like, Frosty the Snowman had to hurry on his way. And it's just like, like, what happened when he got to the traffic cop? Was the traffic cop Chris Hansen just like, Mr. Snowman, would you take a seat over here? And he just runs away in general. Like, that's just something I always like. I always find hilarious whenever that song ends with the song is with this him being stopped by the traffic cop. It's just like I'm off. Is then like Frosty's running away from the cop and all that. But the Beach Boys version is my favorite version of that one. Run Rudolph Run. I got to go with Chuck Berry. The Temptations' Silent Night. That's my favorite version of that song. Just a great rendition of that song. I always listen to that's one of the that's a great thing about Friday After Next. That starts off with that version of that song. But if you listen to that song on its own, it's just you just get so invested in it. It's just well done, sung all around. Some other classic ones that I always listen to. It's Christmas All Over the World by New Edition, and also they do a great rendition of Give Love on Christmas Day. Mavis Staples' Christmas Vacation, the aforementioned Put a Little Love in Your Heart, Do They Know It's Christmas Time by Band-Aid, All Alone on Christmas by Darlene Love from Home Alone 2. Darlene Love, of course, does the, what's that one? Baby Please Come Home for Christmas. Step Into Christmas by Elton John. Christmas in Hollis by Run DMC. Kenny Loggins' Celebrate Me Home. Something About Christmas Time by Bryan Adams. Someday at Christmas by Stevie Wonder, and Mary's Boy Child by Boney M. Those are my personal favorite Christmas songs. Those are the ones I have to listen to every single year, and honestly, I hope I gave you a little bit of a playlist of your own if you're planning any Christmas parties in particular. So that's kind of my best Christmas song versions list. So let's go ahead and move on to our next segment. So yesterday, December 16th, 2023, was actually the 40th anniversary of the release of this special that we're going to talk about here, and that was Disney's Mickey's Christmas Carol. This is one of two classic specials, classic Christmas things in general, that are celebrating 40 years. Of course, the other one being A Christmas Story, which came out in November of '83. But Mickey's Christmas Carol is the one I want to talk about here, and this is basically going to be a fairly quick review of this, because honestly, this is one of those, is when it comes to a Christmas, I've talked about A Christmas Carol before. I've talked about how it's one of my favorite stories of all time, and I always talk about this is the one that introduced me to the whole idea of A Christmas Carol in general. This is just the version that I was introduced to when I was little. I think a lot of people were introduced to this one too. And and I didn't see this one in theaters when it came out. It was always the one that I used to see on television every year. Like, it used to be on NBC every holiday season for like a couple of years between 1984 and 1990. They would have these segments in there where they would show off classic Disney Christmas cartoons. Like, there'd be Donald's Snow Fight, where Donald Duck is having a snowball fight with Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And then there's Pluto's Christmas Tree. But turns out in the 80s there was another one that was part of that, the goofy cartoon The Art of Skiing, but they essentially cut that one out to replace it with a segment talking about whatever new Disney animated movie was coming out at that time. Like, I think in '88 they started doing it with Oliver and Company coming out that year, and then The Little Mermaid, then Rescuers Down Under, and so on and so forth. And then when CBS did it in the 1990s, that was actually when I first started noticing it for the first time. I think I still have a tape of when in 1993 we had a videotape of like classic specials from then. I think that's the one I have still recorded from back then. But like I said, that was the one that I was into. This was my introduction to A Christmas Carol. So kind of running it down here fairly quickly. The story really isn't anything that surprising whatsoever. It's a story, of course, about Scrooge, played in probably the most pitch perfect casting ever by Scrooge McDuck. Basically being visited by the spirits of Christmas after, of course, he's been kind of beaten down in life and just basically has lost the Christmas spirit in general, and so he's visited by three ghosts. And basically Jacob Marley, who's played by Goofy in here, basically has to be the guy. When it tells him, tonight you're going to be visited by three spirits, and of course you get the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future, with the Christmas past being played by Jiminy Cricket, Christmas Present being played by Willie the Giant from Mickey and the Beanstalk, and Christmas Future being played by Pete. And really, there isn't a whole lot of major difference compared to the story of A Christmas Carol. They get everything pretty much by the book here. You've got Mickey playing Bob Cratchit, and Goofy, Donald shows up as Master Fred, and like all these different Disney characters from various things, like Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Three Little Pigs. Like, they take from a lot of different classic Disney cartoons at the time, and it just sucks you in right away with that great opening number. And you look at it's interesting when you look at the cast, the the credits in general, and while this great music is playing in the background, you also see the different names that will become very familiar in terms of animation if you follow animation in general, as it is in the 40 years after this has come out. So you see names like Bernie Matheson, who's a classic Disney animator, Alan Young, of course, plays Scrooge McDuck. This was actually the first time he ever played Scrooge McDuck, and he would eventually keep that role going for over 30 years through various versions of through various Disney animations like DuckTales and even the Christina Montopoulos Mickey Mouse shorts. Tony Marino, who I think is the voice of Donald Duck now, if I'm not mistaken, I think is it Tony Marino or Tony Anselmo's who I'm thinking of. I'm sorry, Tony Anselmo's the one I'm thinking of. Tony Marino, I think, is a name that I'm familiar with. I just don't know who, though. But when you watch these credits, and I'm actually watching it right now just is with the music off, but if you watch these credits, you see these various names on here. Like you see Wayne Allwine, who, of course, voiced Mickey Mouse, and this was actually the first time he ever voiced Mickey Mouse, something that he would continue to do for the next 26 years up until his death in 2009. Clarence Nash, this was the last time he played Donald Duck, and even though he passed away around 2021, as you keep going, you see like names like Glenn Keane, who's a prolific Disney animator, Randy Cartwright, Mark Henn. Mark Henn just recently retired from Disney after 43 years. Dale Bauer, Ed Gombert. These are guys that would work on classic Disney movies in general. Mark Dindal has become a prolific director. Eric Larson's another name that should be very familiar to you. You have John Lasseter. Of course, he went on to make Pixar. Barry Temple, another name that should be very familiar with. Matthew O'Callaghan, who is a prolific director in general. Like, he's done a ton of stuff, specifically the Curious George movie in 2006, and a couple of other Disney projects as well. Gary Eggleston, who works at Pixar. Let's see who else. Nobody there in particular. Like I said, I have the credits playing. It's just not the music playing in the background, obviously, for copyright reasons. But Don Hahn, of course, don't really need to say too much about him. He's the guy that is known for... He was one of the head producers on several of the classic Disney Renaissance films. A lot of good names involved in this project in general, and it's just a movie that... It's just a great retelling of the story. It's just a really well done story. They do a pretty good job of cramming this down to about 30 minutes in length, which is really impressive to think about because you have so much story going on in this particular film, and you have to crunch this down so much. And even when we played this on Freeform is in the years like in between, I can't remember what it was, but it was like late 2000s, early 2010s. They cut several scenes out of this particular version, like Jacob Marley falling down the stairs and doing the Goofy Holler's not in there. The stuff with Fezziwig's party is chipped down a lot. Willie the Giant talking about chocolate pot roast with yogurt is slightly altered. I mean, they cut a lot of stuff down in that particular version. Like they trimmed it down mostly for commercial reasons, but even at the same time, though, the fact that they were condensed it down as much as they did, you still feel that emotional impact when it needs to happen. Like, there's that scene when the Ghost of Christmas Future is showing him, is basically Scrooge asks him, what will happen to Tiny Tim? And the Future's just pointing at the grave, at this gravesite, and Mickey is just looking at him and just like, and he starts crying up, and he just has that look in his face. He looks up in the air, and his eyes are like wide open. He's like, there's like a tear coming down his eyes. That's Mickey Mouse. That's the major mascot of Disney, looking up in the air, crying his eyes out, knowing that his son is dead at this point. It's just like, and there's no dialogue in there. It's just done so well. It's a great special. It's one that still holds up to this very day. It's one that I always go back to. And believe it or not, this was not a well-received special when it came out in the 1980s. It's hard to believe, but when this thing came out, some people actually criticized this a lot. When this came out, this thing got heavily panned by a lot of people back then. You know, Leonard Maltin Leonard Maltin was actually one of the more positive people that said this. But two of the biggest critics of all were Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert when they were still doing At the Movies in Chicago, and I actually have that clip right there, and I'll show you a little bit of what they said about this back in 1983.
I may be about to commit professional suicide because how can you knock a movie with a cute little mouse on a cute little crutch? But that's my feeling, because that scene is deceptive. That is not what the whole movie is about. This movie has very few scenes with Mickey Mouse and his wonderful little family in it. This film does not rank with any of the classic Disney animated features. It's missing Mickey, frankly. He and his family are in far too few scenes. At its best, this is only a genial and slightly colorful little stocking stuffer for kids, and I'll be a Scrooge. I give it thumbs down. I was very disappointed.
I can't believe my ears.
Well,
You're going to vote against Mickey's Christmas Carol?
yes.
With Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck? I am too.
Well, of course.
I am too. I was disappointed as well. I'll tell you two reasons that I thought. First of all, it's wall-to-wall with words. They talk for the whole 25 minutes. They don't use the magic of visual animation that
Very
the
few scenes.
Disney people...
Okay, it's not wall to wall with words. I just talked about the scene where I just talked about one of the big scenes in the short where Mickey is literally crying out of the fact that Tiny Tim is dead, and there's literally no words is involved in that. Like, so the fact that they're saying wall to wall with words, like, I don't know. Like, I don't really buy into that whatsoever. But let's continue on.
Well, of course.
I am too. I was disappointed as well. I'll tell you two reasons that I thought. First of all, it's wall-to-wall with words. They talk for the whole 25 minutes. They don't use the magic of visual animation that Disney people are famous for.
Okay, that's also false because there's clearly a lot of visual animation if you watch the show. Especially if you watch the short, you see the visual animation in terms of the way that the city is drawn. Yeah, it's not going to be. It's not. It was pretty much what Disney was doing at the time. So I don't understand where they're coming from with that. But again, these are two of the greatest film critics of all time. So what do I know? Let's keep going.
Secondly, they don't change the story. This is simply Dickens' Christmas Carol.
And, like, okay, so they don't change it as much. They only have about a half an hour to work with here. So I don't understand what they were really coming from with this. But, yeah, let's keep going. There's still about a couple of minutes left.
Ghost of Christmas Past, Present, and Future, Bob Cratchit, and so forth, just like in the book. Usually, in the old days of the Disney studio, they would put an ironic spin on it. There would have been something satirical. They would have had fun with it. It would have been Mickey's version of this story. But instead, it's absolutely a forced march through the same old story.
I would have rather have seen the re-release of two of the old classic old Mickey Mouse. I'll stand two of those old cartoons up with this. It was those old cartoons up with this. It was, and you know, I went in there with a real good heart. I wanted to love this. I mean, I look forward to it. I wish Disney would make feature-length animated cartoons.
This is a real safe movie. They didn't have that extra little artistic push to make it into something a little bit more than exactly what you were expecting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep in mind in here that this is 1983. This was a time when Disney was not in the best financial situation that they were in, that they had been in at any point in time. Well, I guess nowadays that's the case, but basically the fact that they're saying that there's a lack of visual animation that the Disney people are famous for, which is a complete lie, a forced march through the Charles Dickens story, which again, it's only a half hour short. I don't know what else you wanted them to do, but the fact that they also said that it's not the same, it's the same story without any ironic spin. Like, what more of a spin do you need? Like I don't get what else they wanted. I really do not get what else they wanted to add to this that hadn't been already in there as it is. But it's just like, I don't get it, man. These are the two. Siskel and Ebert are people that critics in general. We look to these guys. That these are my biggest These are two of my biggest influences, and they're the ones that are saying like, "No, there's nothing about this that works." Well, it's just like, I really don't know what else you want them to do. Like, really, this is probably the most successful thing they had going at this point in the early '80s compared to some of the stuff that they had out at the time. But I digress. That's just their opinions, though. But then again, Siskel and Ebert, and even Richard Roeper in general, have been wrong about many movies. But we still love them. I mean, we still love listening to them talk about films in general. But again, that's just their opinion. But yeah, like I said, this did not get the best reception when it came out from most people. But it did get nominated for an Oscar the following year, and it did eventually go on to become that holiday tradition that was on TV for a number of years. And it's one that I always go back to every Christmas. Like every time I go to Disney Plus, I have to watch it. That's got to be the first thing I watch every year when it comes to the Christmas classics. I've watched it a couple times already. I'm definitely going to watch it again many more times to come. Just one of my favorite versions of the story, the one I grew up with. I can't recommend this one enough. Mickey's Christmas Carol. And I should talk about more of my favorite versions of A Christmas Carol in general. Maybe that will be something for next week. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and wrap this up. We'll talk about some recommendations for the week. It is very much a very slow week in terms of new releases. The biggest new releases that come out this week in terms of physical media, The Exorcist Believer, which I don't think anyone really wants that one in general, especially before Christmas, but I don't know, there might be somebody out there. But there's new transfers of there's new steelbooks coming out for Avatar, Avatar 3D, and Avatar The Way of Water. The new releases that I recommend, probably the biggest one is JFK, which is getting a very nice looking 4K release by Shout Factory. Shout Factory, of course, can usually do no wrong with their releases, so JFK is also one of Oliver Stone's really good cinematic masterpieces. It's one of those movies that I always go back to, and I actually, a couple years ago, I got a JFK Revisited Blu-ray set, which I thought was this version that's coming out on Friday, but it was actually a documentary in general, so I'm actually looking forward to really getting this one. Maybe for Christmas, maybe for my birthday coming up a couple weeks after Christmas, but it's one I'm definitely going to get my hands on pretty soon. I'm still trying to find the Clue set that came out this week, too. I haven't been able to find that one. But I'll run down some Christmas specials and movies in general that if you haven't, that now that we're heading into the week of Christmas, this is now the time to definitely check those ones out. Just running through them pretty quickly. Toy Story The Time for God, really good, underrated Toy Story holiday special that came out a couple of years ago. It's really well done. I really love this one a lot. It keeps in the spirit of the original movies. It really is a well-made new Christmas classic. I really love that one a lot. Probably the best thing that came out of those god-awful Smurfs movies from the early 2010s, the Smurfs: A Christmas Carol, which is a really well-done animated special that mixes the CG of the Smurfs movie, but mostly features a lot of 2D animation, too, reminiscent of the classic Smurf cartoons of the 80s. I really recommend that one. Santa Claus is Coming to Town is another one I recommend. A Colbert Christmas, The Greatest Gift of All, The Colbert Report Christmas Special. A criminally underrated Opus and Bill special produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. It features Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams among the cast. Even if you've never seen the Opus and Bill comic strips, this is a great animated special that came out in the 90s. I highly recommend that one. Winnie the Pooh and Christmas 2 is another one I recommend. Mickey's Christmas Carol, Garfield Christmas Special, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and of course my favorite Christmas special of all time has got to be A Charlie Brown Christmas. That's the one that I have to watch every single year. If you're looking for some, I'm trying to see if maybe there's some newer Christmas specials here. Merry Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda Holiday, Bah Humduck, A Looney Tunes Christmas. The Prep and Landing specials are really good. Shrek the Halls. There's a great underrated version of Yes, Virginia that came out in 2009 that I highly recommend checking out. The Riff Tracks Christmas Short Extravaganza special. New Christmas movies in general. Violent Night, Krampus, Nothing Like the Holidays, Dan in Real Life, The Family Stone, The Night Before, This Christmas, Harold and Kumar 3D Christmas, the aforementioned Krampus, The Best Man Holiday, Disney's A Christmas Carol, and Arthur Christmas. That's probably the best new Christmas classic we've had in the last 15 years, and I can't recommend that one enough. In terms of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, I will actually save those for next week when we do our free preview show coming up. And speaking of that free preview show, we are going to have another free preview episode that will be up on the regular Reviewing Network YouTube channel. That's going to be coming up on Christmas Eve, and there will also be one for New Year's Eve as well on December 31st. So I'll have a link to where you can watch those episodes next week and the week before that, week after that, I should say, on this particular channel. So if you want to look for those, I'll have a link to where you can watch those. And with that said, that's going to wrap this one up. So thank you guys for watching this episode of the Reviewing Network Live. Of course, we'll be back next Sunday night, early Monday morning, depending on whether you watch it. And if you like this and you want to see more videos like this, I would highly ask you to go hit the like and subscribe button. Check out some of the other videos we've done. And that's going to do it for this week. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time for another episode. So we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, we are out.